I was standing in his apartment at 2 in the morning, scrubbing dried beer stains off his kitchen counter while he slept in the bedroom, when my phone buzzed with a text from my best friend. "Where are you? You said you'd be here an hour ago." I'd completely forgotten. Again. We were supposed to meet for drinks to celebrate her promotion. I'd promised I'd be there. But then Nathan called saying he needed me, and I'd dropped everything like I always did. I texted back a quick apology, some excuse about work running late, and went back to cleaning his kitchen. The sink was full of dishes that had been sitting there for days. The trash was overflowing. There were empty liquor bottles lined up on the counter like soldiers. I'd come over because he'd called me crying. Said he was having a panic attack and needed someone to talk to. When I got here, he was playing video games with his headphones on. He'd barely looked up when I walked in. "Hey babe," he'd said casually. "There's leftover pizza in the fridge if you want some." No mention of the panic attack. No acknowledgement that he'd pulled me away from my plans. Just an assumption that I'd take care of whatever mess he'd left behind. And I did. Because that's what I always did. I was elbow-deep in greasy dishwater when I heard footsteps behind me. "What are you doing?" I turned. Nathan was standing in the doorway wearing sweatpants and a stained t-shirt, arms crossed, looking at me like I was a stranger who'd broken into his apartment. "Cleaning," I said, gesturing at the obvious disaster around us. "Why?" "Because it needed to be done. You said you've been too depressed to deal with it, so I thought I'd help." He stared at me for a long moment. Then he said the words that would shatter everything I thought I knew about love. "I never asked you to do that." I froze, my hand still in the soapy water. "What? All of this?" He gestured around the apartment I'd spent the last 2 hours cleaning. The dishes, the cooking, the cleaning. Paying my electric bill last month. Calling my boss to cover for me when I was too hungover to go to work. Picking up my prescriptions. Managing my calendar. "I never asked you to do any of that." I pulled my hands out of the water and dried them on a towel, moving slowly, trying to process what he was saying. "You didn't have to ask. I did it because I love you." "That's the problem," he said, his voice flat and cold. "You think doing things for me means you love me. But I never wanted this. I never wanted a mother. I wanted a girlfriend." The word hit me like a slap. Mother. Like everything I'd done out of care and concern was somehow pathological. Smothering. "I'm not trying to be your mother," I said quietly. "I'm trying to be your partner. Partners help each other. Partners don't do everything for each other. Partners are equal." "This?" He gestured at the clean kitchen, at me standing there in my ruined clothes with dishwater soaking through my sleeves. "This is you trying to make me need you. And honestly? It's suffocating." I felt my chest tighten, felt the familiar panic rising. This was the part where I was supposed to apologize, to explain that I'd just been trying to help, to promise I'd do better. But something stopped me this time. Maybe it was the casual cruelty in his voice. Maybe it was the way he was looking at me like I was an inconvenience. Maybe it was just that I was finally, after years of this pattern, too exhausted to keep performing. "Suffocating," I repeated. "I've been supporting you for 8 months. Financially, emotionally, physically. You call me at 3 in the morning having panic attacks and I come over. You tell me you can't afford groceries and I buy them. You say you're too anxious to call the doctor and I make the appointment and drive you there. And that's suffocating?" I was going through a rough patch. I didn't say I needed you to fix my entire life. So what are you saying? He ran his hand through his hair, not meeting my eyes. "I think we should take a break. I need space to figure myself out. Without someone constantly hovering over me." The room went very quiet. I could hear the drip of the faucet I hadn't quite turned off all the way. Could hear the hum of his refrigerator. Could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "You're breaking up with me," I said. It wasn't a question. I'm saying I need space. That's the same thing. He didn't deny it. I looked around the apartment. At the clean counters and the organized cabinets and the folded laundry sitting on his couch that I'd done while he was at the gym. At the groceries I'd bought 3 days ago that were now neatly stocked in his pantry. At the electric bill I'd paid sitting on his coffee table with my handwriting on the envelope. Evidence of my love. Evidence of my foolishness. I grabbed my purse from the counter and walked past him without another word. He said my name once, weakly, like maybe he was having second thoughts. But I didn't stop. I walked out of his apartment, got in my car, and drove home in complete silence. No crying. No music. No desperate calls to friends asking them to tell me it would be okay. Just silence and the question that had been lurking in the back of my mind for years, finally demanding an answer. How did I keep ending up here? With men who took everything I gave and then told me they never asked for it? I never thought I'd tell this story. Not because I'm ashamed, though there's plenty of shame woven through every part of it. But because for the longest time I didn't recognize it as a story worth telling. I thought I was just unlucky in love. I thought I kept meeting men at the wrong time, when they were dealing with too much, when they weren't ready for commitment. It took me until I was 29 years old, standing in my apartment at 2:30 in the morning staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, to realize the truth. I wasn't unlucky. I was addicted to fixing broken men. And in the process, I'd broken myself so thoroughly that I didn't even recognize the pieces anymore. My name is Rebecca, and people have always told me I have a good heart. In elementary school, I was the kid who befriended the lonely new student. In middle school, I was the one sitting with the girl everyone else excluded at lunch. In high school, I was the friend everyone came to with their problems, the shoulder everyone cried on, the person who always knew what to say to make things better. I liked being that person. It made me feel valuable. Important. Like I had a purpose beyond just existing. I didn't realize I was training myself for a lifetime of putting everyone else's needs before my own. I didn't realize I was building an identity entirely around being needed, and that one day that need would become an addiction I couldn't break. The first time I fell for a broken man, I was 22 years old and finishing up my senior year of college. His name was Tyler. We met at a coffee shop near campus on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I was studying for midterms, highlighter in hand, surrounded by textbooks and note cards. He was sitting alone in the corner by the window, staring at nothing. I noticed him because he looked sad. Not regular sad. The kind of sad that sits heavy on someone's shoulders like physical weight, pulling them down, making every breath look like effort. I tried to focus on my studying, but I kept glancing over at him. He hadn't touched his coffee. Hadn't looked at his phone. Just sat there staring out the window with this expression of absolute devastation on his face. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked over to his table and asked if he was okay. He looked up at me with these dark, exhausted eyes and said, "Not really. But I will be." We started talking. I sat down across from him and he told me his whole story like I was a priest and he was confessing. His mom had just been diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. He'd dropped out of school to go home and take care of her, but he didn't have enough money for both rent and medical bills, so he was losing his apartment. He was trying to figure out where he was going to stay until he could move back to his hometown 3 states away. My heart broke for him. This wasn't some spoiled college kid complaining about a bad grade or a breakup. This was someone dealing with real, devastating, life-altering circumstances. Someone who needed help. I offered to let him stay on my couch until he figured things out. He moved in 3 days later with 2 garbage bags full of clothes and a laptop with a cracked screen. Said he'd only stay a week, maybe 2 at the most, just until he could save enough money for first month's rent somewhere cheaper. He stayed for 4 months. At first, it felt good. Natural, even. I'd come home from classes and make dinner for both of us. We'd watch Netflix and talk about his mom's treatment, about his plans for the future, about how grateful he was to have someone like me in his life. He'd tell me I was the only good thing that had happened to him in months, that he didn't know what he'd do without me. I liked being the good thing. It made me feel special in a way nothing else did. My whole life, I'd been average. Average grades, average looks, average everything. But to Tyler, I was extraordinary. I was his savior. It didn't occur to me that being someone's savior isn't the same as being someone's partner. Somewhere around the 6-week mark, things started shifting. Tyler stopped looking for a job. Stopped making concrete plans to move back home. When I'd ask about it gently, not wanting to pressure him, he'd say he was too depressed to deal with it right now. That the stress of his mom's illness was overwhelming him and he couldn't focus on anything else. So I stopped asking. I didn't want to add to his stress. Didn't want to be another source of pressure when he was already carrying so much. I started paying for all the groceries. Then the utilities. Then I gave him money for his phone bill because he said he needed to stay in contact with his family, needed to be reachable in case something happened with his mom. I was working part-time at a bookstore and taking a full course load. Money was tight. I was already on financial aid and student loans. But every time I hesitated to give him money, every time I thought maybe I should say no, I'd think about his mother dying of cancer and feel like the most selfish person alive. What kind of person puts their own financial comfort above someone's family crisis? What kind of person says no when someone they care about is suffering? My friend started asking questions. Why was this guy I barely knew living on my couch? Why was I paying his bills? Why did I look so exhausted all the time? I defended him passionately. They didn't understand what he was going through. They didn't know how hard it was to watch a parent die. I was just helping someone in need. That's what good people do. That's what love looks like. I used that word. Love. Even though we'd never defined our relationship. Even though he'd never actually said he had feelings for me beyond gratitude. Looking back now, I can see how quickly I isolated myself. How I chose defending Tyler over maintaining my friendships. How I prioritized his comfort over my own financial stability. How I mistook his dependence for intimacy. But at the time, I thought I was being compassionate. Noble, even. 2 months in, Tyler started drinking. Just a beer or two in the evenings at first. He said it helped take the edge off, helped him sleep when his anxiety was too overwhelming. I didn't think much of it. Lots of people have a drink to unwind. But then it was 3 beers. Then 4. Then it was shots of whiskey he'd ask me to buy because beer wasn't strong enough anymore to quiet his thoughts. I bought the whiskey. I bought the vodka. I bought whatever he asked for because I understood he was self-medicating his grief and I didn't want to be judgmental. I'd come home from class or work and find him passed out on my couch, empty bottles on the floor, the apartment reeking of alcohol. I'd clean up quietly, cover him with a blanket, and tell myself this was temporary. Once his mom got better, or once he processed his feelings, he'd get back on his feet. He just needed time and patience and someone who wouldn't give up on him. His mom died in month 3. I drove him to the funeral 3 states away. Paid for the gas because he still didn't have any money. Sat in the back of the church and watched him fall apart while his family surrounded him with support and love. At the reception afterward, his older sister pulled me aside. She had the same dark eyes as Tyler, but hers were sharp and assessing. "Thank you for taking care of him," she said. "Tyler's always struggled with responsibility. It's good he found someone willing to pick up the slack." The comment landed strangely, but I pushed it away. She was grieving too. She didn't mean it the way it sounded. She was just acknowledging that I'd been there for her brother during an impossible time. We drove back to my apartment in silence. Tyler stared out the window the entire 5-hour drive, not speaking, barely moving. When we got home, he went straight to the couch and turned on the TV. I stood in the kitchen, emotionally drained, physically exhausted, and suddenly aware that I had no idea what happened next. The funeral was over. His mom was gone. What was Tyler's plan now? Tyler, I said carefully. What are you thinking in terms of next steps? What do you mean? He didn't look away from the TV. I mean for your life. Are you going to look for a job? Are you staying here or moving back to your hometown? What's the plan? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, I don't know. I can't think about that right now. I understand. But we need to figure something out eventually. I can't keep supporting both of us financially. I'm already behind on my own bills. He turned to look at me then, and his face was cold. Closed off in a way I'd never seen before. Are you seriously asking me about money right now? I just buried my mother. I know. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be insensitive. I just need you to understand that I'm struggling too. Struggling? You have a place to live. You have a job. You're not dealing with grief that makes you want to stop existing. But sure, you're struggling because you have to buy extra groceries. The unfairness of it stole my breath. That's not what I said. It's what you meant. You want me to start contributing or you want me gone? Just say it. Tyler, no. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm asking you to meet me halfway. To contribute something, anything. Even just looking for work would help. I'm dealing with grief, Rebecca. I can't meet you anywhere right now. I can barely get out of bed in the morning. Then maybe you should talk to someone. A therapist. A grief counselor. Someone who can help you process this in a healthy way. I don't need a therapist. I need people in my life who actually support me instead of putting conditions on their love. That sentence hit me like a punch. Conditions on their love. Was that what I was doing? Was I being selfish and demanding when I should have been patient and understanding? I'm not putting conditions on anything, I said quietly. I'm just asking for partnership. Partnership, he repeated with a bitter laugh. You want partnership? I just lost my mother. I have nothing to give anyone right now. If you can't handle that, then I'll leave. I don't need your charity. He stood up abruptly, grabbed his jacket, and walked out. Didn't come back for 2 days. When he finally returned, he apologized. Said he'd been overwhelmed and took it out on me unfairly. Said he knew I was just trying to help and he appreciated everything I'd done. Said he'd start looking for work, start contributing, start being a better partner. I forgave him immediately. Of course I did. He was hurting. I understood that. And he'd acknowledged his behavior and promised to do better. That's all I could ask for. He didn't start looking for work. The drinking got worse. 2 weeks after the funeral, I came home from my shift at the bookstore and found Tyler on the couch with a girl I'd never seen before. They weren't touching, weren't doing anything inappropriate, but there was an intimacy in the way they were sitting together that made my stomach turn. Who's this? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Tyler glanced up casually, like I'd just walked in on him watching TV alone. This is Emma. We went to high school together. She's in town visiting family and stopped by to say hi. Emma smiled at me warmly. She was pretty in that effortless way some girls are. Natural. She looked comfortable and relaxed sitting on my couch with my whatever Tyler was. Tyler's told me so much about you, Emma said. Thanks for letting him crash here. You're really sweet to help him out during such a hard time. Letting him crash here. Like I was just some generous friend providing temporary housing, not his girlfriend who'd been supporting him emotionally and financially for 4 months. Except we'd never actually defined what we were. We'd never had the relationship conversation. I'd just assumed that sleeping in the same bed and sharing a life meant we were together. Yeah, I said, my voice sounding strange to my own ears. No problem. Emma left about an hour later. I waited until the door closed behind her before I asked Tyler what that was about. What was about? He was back on his phone, scrolling through something. You introduced me as your roommate. I didn't introduce you as anything. Exactly. Why didn't you tell her I'm your girlfriend? He looked up from his phone with genuine confusion on his face. Because we're not really dating, Rebecca. We're friends. You've been helping me out, and I'm grateful, but I never said we were in a relationship. The room tilted. I sat down on the chair across from him because my legs suddenly didn't feel stable enough to hold me up. We've been sleeping in the same bed for 3 months. As friends. For comfort. I thought you understood that. You told me you loved me. 2 weeks ago, when we were driving back from the funeral. You said I was the only person who'd ever really loved you and that you loved me too. I do love you. As a friend. You're important to me, Rebecca. But I've been clear about where I'm at emotionally. I'm not in a place for a romantic relationship. He'd never been clear about anything. He'd been deliberately vague, letting me believe whatever I wanted to believe as long as it benefited him. As long as I kept cooking and cleaning and paying bills and providing emotional support. So this whole time, I said slowly, trying to process, you thought we were just friends? I thought we were on the same page. You offered to help me during a hard time. I accepted. That's it. That's it. 4 months of my life. Thousands of dollars. Countless hours of emotional labor. And to him, it was just a temporary arrangement with a helpful friend. I need you to leave, I said. He looked surprised. What? I need you to pack your things and leave. Tonight. Rebecca, come on. Don't be like this. I'm sorry if there was a misunderstanding, but you're being unreasonable. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Are you serious right now? You're kicking me out because I don't want to date you? That's insane. I'm asking you to leave because you've been using me. And I'm done being used. He stood up, and for the first time I saw anger flash across his face. Real anger, not the performative hurt he usually deployed when he wanted me to back down. Using you? I never asked for any of this. You offered. You pushed all of this on me without me asking. That's not my fault. And there it was. The line that would echo through every failed relationship I'd have for the next 7 years. I never asked you to do that. Tyler packed his garbage bags that night and left. Told me I was making a huge mistake, that I was abandoning him when he needed me most, that he'd thought I was different from everyone else who'd given up on him. The guilt almost made me take it back. Almost made me apologize and beg him to stay. But I didn't. I let him leave. And then I collapsed on my couch and cried for 2 days straight. I didn't cry because I loved him. Looking back, I don't think I ever really loved Tyler. I cried because I felt like I'd failed. Like if I'd just been better, more patient, more understanding, I could have fixed him. I could have turned him into someone capable of loving me back. It didn't occur to me that he didn't need fixing. He needed professional help and a willingness to help himself. And neither of those things were my responsibility. It didn't occur to me that maybe I hadn't loved him either. Maybe I'd just loved being needed. If this story is resonating with you, if you've ever found yourself in a relationship where you gave everything and received nothing, please hit the like button and subscribe to Peace Stories. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, because knowing I'm not alone in these experiences means more than you could imagine. I wish I could tell you I learned from Tyler. That I recognized the pattern and promised myself I'd never fall for a broken man again. But I didn't learn. The pattern was deeper than one failed relationship. It was woven into the fabric of who I was. 6 months after Tyler, I met Daniel. I was working at the bookstore when he came in looking for a self-help book about moving on after divorce. He looked lost wandering the aisles, so I offered to help him find what he was looking for. We ended up talking for 20 minutes. He told me his wife had blindsided him with divorce papers 6 months ago. That she'd taken everything in the settlement, the house, most of their savings, even their dog. That he'd thought they were happy and then one day she just announced she'd been miserable for years and wanted out. He looked so sad telling me this story. So genuinely devastated. And I felt that familiar pull, that instinct to help, to fix, to make the pain go away. I recommended a few books. He bought all of them. Asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime and continue the conversation. I said yes. We went to coffee 3 days later. He talked about his ex-wife for 2 hours straight. How they'd met in college. How he'd thought she was the love of his life. How the betrayal had shattered his ability to trust anyone. I listened. I empathized. I told him I was sorry he'd gone through that he deserved better, that eventually he'd heal and be able to trust again. He looked at me like I'd just given him permission to hope. "You're really easy to talk to," he said. "I haven't been able to open up to anyone since the divorce. But you make me feel safe." I liked making him feel safe. It made me feel valuable. We started dating a week later. At first, Daniel seemed different from Tyler. He had a job, an apartment, a car. He seemed stable and functional. But he was also completely emotionally unavailable, trapped in a cycle of bitterness and resentment about his ex-wife that he couldn't escape. Every conversation somehow circled back to her. What she'd done, how she'd betrayed him, how he'd given her everything and she'd thrown it away. He'd analyze their relationship obsessively, dissecting every moment, looking for signs he'd missed. I tried to be patient. He was processing the end of a marriage. That takes time. But a month in, I realized he wasn't processing. He was stuck. Caught in a loop he had no interest in breaking out of. I gently suggested therapy. He said therapists were scammers who just wanted to take people's money when they were vulnerable. I suggested talking to friends or family. He said none of them understood what he'd been through. I suggested maybe trying to forgive his ex and move forward. He said I clearly didn't grasp the depth of the betrayal. So I stopped suggesting anything. And I started absorbing his pain instead. He'd call me at midnight crying about how his ex-wife had ruined his life. I'd stay on the phone for hours reassuring him that he was a good man who deserved better. He'd show up at my apartment unannounced in the middle of the day because he was having a panic attack about running into his ex somewhere. I'd cancel whatever I was doing and sit with him until he calmed down. He went through my phone one night while I was in the shower. When I came out, he was scrolling through my messages. "What are you doing?" I asked, wrapping the towel tighter around myself. "Just checking," he said casually. "Checking what?" "Making sure you're not talking to other guys. My ex cheated on me. I need to know I can trust you." Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that going through someone's phone without permission was a massive violation. But I pushed those instincts down. "You can trust me," I said. "I'm not your ex-wife." "I know. I'm sorry. I just get paranoid sometimes." "You understand, right?" I said I understood. I let him finish scrolling through my messages. And I told myself it was fine, that he just needed reassurance until he healed from his trauma. My friends hated Daniel. They said he was controlling and manipulative. That I'd changed since I started dating him, become quieter, more withdrawn. That I was always canceling plans with them to take care of his emotional crises. I defended him exactly like I'd defended Tyler. They didn't know him like I did. They didn't see how broken he was underneath the anger. He just needed time and patience and someone who wouldn't give up on him. I stopped hanging out with my friends as much. It was easier than constantly defending my relationship. Easier than hearing them tell me I deserved better when I already knew deep down that they were right but couldn't admit it. 3 months into dating Daniel, he lost his job. He said it was because his boss was friends with his ex-wife and she'd poisoned everyone against him. That she'd destroyed his professional reputation out of spite. I didn't question it. I just asked what I could do to help. He needed money for rent. I gave it to him without hesitation. He needed someone to drive him to job interviews because his car had broken down. I rearranged my work schedule to drive him. He needed help with his resume and cover letters. I spent hours editing them, making them perfect. He didn't get a new job for months. He said the market was terrible, that no one was hiring, that his ex had ruined his reputation so thoroughly that he was essentially blacklisted in his industry. I believed every word. I wanted to believe him. Because if his problems were really just bad luck and his ex-wife's vindictiveness, then I could fix them. I could help him build a new life, a better life, and he'd finally be able to move on and love me properly. 4 months in, I was paying for everything. His rent, his groceries, his phone bill. My credit card was maxed out. My savings account was empty. I was working overtime at the bookstore and picking up freelance writing gigs online just to keep up with both our expenses. My mom called one Sunday afternoon and asked if I was okay. Said I sounded exhausted every time we talked, that she was worried about me. I told her I was fine. Just busy with work and my relationship. How are things with Daniel? She asked carefully. I'd mentioned him a few times but never gone into detail about our relationship or his situation. Good, I said. He's great. You don't sound happy. I'm just tired, Mom. There was a long pause. Then she said something that stuck with me, even though I wasn't ready to hear it at the time. Rebecca, you've always had this need to fix people. Even when you were little, you'd bring home stray cats, befriend the kids everyone else avoided. Your heart is beautiful, sweetheart. But you have to be careful. Not everyone wants to be fixed. And some people will take everything you give and still leave you with nothing. Daniel's not taking advantage of me, I said defensively. He's going through a hard time. I'm sure he is. I'm just saying you need to take care of yourself too. You can't pour from an empty cup. I told her I was fine and changed the subject. But her words rattled around in my head for days afterward. Was I pouring from an empty cup? Was I so focused on fixing Daniel that I'd forgotten to take care of myself? I looked in the mirror one night after a particularly long shift at work and barely recognized myself. I'd lost weight. My skin looked gray. I had dark circles under my eyes from not sleeping enough. I looked hollow. But I pushed the observation away. Daniel needed me. I couldn't abandon him just because I was tired. 5 months into the relationship, I came home early from work one day and found Daniel on my couch with a woman I'd never met. They weren't touching, but they were sitting close together. Too close. The energy between them felt intimate in a way that made my stomach drop. Who's this? I asked, setting my bag down by the door. Daniel stood up quickly, guilt flashing across his face before he smoothed it away. This is Michelle. We used to work together before I got fired. She stopped by to see how I was doing. Michelle smiled at me warmly, completely oblivious to my discomfort. Daniel's told me so much about you. It's so sweet how you're taking care of him during this difficult time. Taking care of him. Like I was a nurse or a charity organization, not his girlfriend. How does she know where I live? I asked after Michelle left. I gave her the address. Is that a problem? You didn't think to ask me first? Or tell me she was coming over? It's not a big deal, Rebecca. She's a friend. Stop being paranoid. I'm not being paranoid. I just think it's weird that you're having women I've never met over to my apartment without mentioning it. He sighed dramatically, like I was being exhausting. You sound just like my ex-wife. Always suspicious, always accusing me of things I didn't do. The comparison felt like a slap. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm asking a reasonable question. No, you're being controlling. I'm allowed to have friends. Or are you going to isolate me from everyone like she did? We fought for over an hour. He kept turning everything around, making me feel like I was overreacting, like my concerns were unreasonable. By the end of it, I was apologizing for making him feel controlled. Looking back, I can see how textbook the manipulation was. But in the moment, I was so caught up in trying to be the cool, understanding girlfriend that I ignored every red flag. 2 weeks later, I found messages on Daniel's phone. He'd left it on my bathroom counter while he was in the shower, and a text from Michelle popped up on the screen. Last night was amazing. When can I see you again? My hands were shaking as I opened the message thread. Dozens of texts. Flirting. Planning secret meetups. Michelle sending pictures of herself. Daniel responding enthusiastically. I sat on the edge of my bed holding his phone, feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath me. When Daniel came out of the shower, I confronted him immediately. He didn't even try to deny it. Just shrugged and said, "I've been feeling disconnected from you. You're always working, never have time for me anymore. Michelle pays attention to me in a way you don't." "I'm always working because I'm paying your bills," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "I'm supporting both of us while you sit here doing nothing but feeling sorry for yourself and apparently cheating on me." "I never asked you to support me financially," he said. And there it was again. That line. You offered. You insisted, actually. Said you wanted to help. Don't blame me for accepting. I helped you because I loved you. Because I thought we were building something together. You helped me because you like feeling needed. You like being the savior. But I don't need saving, Rebecca. I need a partner. And you've been so busy trying to fix my life that you forgot to actually be present in the relationship." The audacity of it stole my breath. He'd cheated on me, used me financially and emotionally, and somehow he was making it my fault. "Get out," I said. "Rebecca, get out of my apartment. Now." He tried to argue, said we could work through this if I'd just be willing to communicate better. But I was done. I was so far past done. I threw his things into garbage bags while he protested. Physically pushed him toward the door when he refused to leave. Changed my locks the next day. And then I collapsed. Not physically, though I was exhausted enough that my body probably wanted to. I collapsed emotionally. Spent a week in bed calling in sick to work, barely eating, just staring at the ceiling trying to figure out how I'd ended up here again. 2 failed relationships. Same pattern. Different men. I gave everything. They took everything. And then they blamed me for giving. My best friend came over after I'd been ignoring her calls for days. She had a key from before I'd started dating Daniel and distancing myself from everyone. She took one look at me and started crying. "What did he do to you?" she asked. I told her everything. Tyler, Daniel, the pattern I was starting to see but didn't know how to break. She held me while I cried. Then she said something I needed to hear. "You're not responsible for saving people, Becca. Especially people who don't want to be saved. You keep choosing men who are broken and hoping you can fix them, but that's not your job. You're looking for people who need you because you think being needed is the same as being loved. But it's not. It's just being used." I wanted to argue. Wanted to defend myself, to say I was just compassionate, just caring, just trying to help. But I couldn't. Because she was right. Being needed had become my drug. My way of feeling valuable. And I'd gotten so addicted to it that I couldn't see how much it was destroying me. I started therapy after that. Finally admitted that I had a problem, that this pattern wasn't just bad luck but something deeper I needed to address. My therapist was a woman in her 50s named Dr. Chen. She had kind eyes and a direct way of speaking that I appreciated. In our first session, she asked me to tell her about my childhood. I said it was normal. Loving parents, stable home, nothing particularly traumatic. She asked if I'd ever felt overlooked or unimportant growing up. The question caught me off guard. I thought about it for a long time. I was the middle child of 3. My older sister Emma was the high achiever, straight A's, captain of the debate team, full scholarship to a prestigious university. My younger brother Michael was the baby, the charmer, the one who could make everyone laugh. He got away with everything because he was cute and funny. And I was just there. Reliable Rebecca. Helpful Rebecca. The one who didn't cause problems, didn't demand attention, just quietly did what needed to be done. Did you feel invisible? Dr. Chen asked gently. The word hit me like a physical blow. Yes. I'd felt invisible. Not unloved, my parents were good people who cared about all their kids. But unseen. Like my value was in what I could do for the family, not in who I was as a person. So when you meet someone who needs you, Dr. Chen said, you finally feel visible. I started crying. Because she was absolutely right. Every broken man I'd chosen had made me feel seen in a way nothing else did. They needed me. That need made me important, made me matter, made me visible. But it was a hollow kind of visibility. Based entirely on what I could provide, not on who I was. We spent months unpacking this. The childhood dynamics that had taught me my value was in service. The way I'd built my entire identity around being helpful. The addiction to being needed that overrode every other consideration. You have to learn who you are outside of being needed, Dr. Chen said. You have to build a sense of self that exists independent of your relationships. It sounded so simple. But it was the hardest thing I'd ever tried to do. Who was I when I wasn't taking care of someone? I had no idea. I'd never explored that question. I started small. Picked up hobbies I'd abandoned over the years. I'd loved painting in high school but had stopped because I was always too busy helping other people with their problems. I bought cheap supplies and started painting again, badly at first, but it didn't matter. It was mine. I started reading for pleasure again instead of just reading self-help books to better understand how to support whoever I was dating. I joined a book club with people who didn't know anything about my relationship history. I reconnected with old friends I'd pushed away. Apologized for disappearing into relationships and neglecting them. Most of them forgave me. A few didn't, and I had to accept that some damage couldn't be undone. Slowly, painfully, I started building a life that was mine. Separate from anyone else's needs or problems. Just mine. And Dr. Chen kept pushing me to examine my relationship patterns. You're attracted to broken people, she said in one session. Why do you think that is? Because I want to help them? That's what you tell yourself. But I think it's more than that. I think you choose broken people because they're safe. Safe? How is dating someone who uses me safe? Because as long as they're broken, as long as they need fixing, you never have to risk real intimacy. You never have to be vulnerable. You're always the helper, never the one being helped. You're always in control. The observation shook me. I'd never thought about it that way. But she was right. Every relationship I'd been in, I'd been the strong one, the capable one, the one who had it together. I'd never let anyone see my weaknesses, my needs, my vulnerabilities. Because being vulnerable meant risking rejection. And if someone rejected the real me, not the helpful version but the actual messy, complicated person underneath, I didn't know if I could survive that. It was safer to date broken men who needed me. Because as long as they needed me, I didn't have to risk being truly seen. What happens if you date someone who's healthy? Dr. Chen asked. Someone who doesn't need fixing? I don't know. I've never tried. Why not? Because healthy people don't need me. And if they don't need me, why would they want me? And there it was. The core belief driving everything. The idea that my only value was in what I could do for others, not in who I was. Dr. Chen leaned forward. Rebecca, your worth is not dependent on how useful you are to other people. You are valuable simply because you exist. Do you believe that? I wanted to say yes. But I couldn't. Because I didn't believe it. I'd never believed it. We had a lot of work to do. I stayed single for a year after Daniel Focused on therapy, on building my own life, on learning to be comfortable alone. It was hard. I went on a few dates here and there, but the moment I sensed any kind of brokenness in the other person, any hint that they might need fixing, I ran. My therapist said this was progress. That recognizing the pattern and choosing to walk away was huge growth. But it didn't feel like progress. It felt lonely. I started to wonder if I'd ever be able to have a healthy relationship. If I was too damaged, too programmed to seek out broken people, to ever choose differently. And then I met Marcus. Marcus was a friend of a friend. We met at a birthday party where I didn't know many people. He was standing by the snack table looking slightly uncomfortable, and I recognized that look. The "I don't really know anyone here but I'm trying to be social" look. I walked over and introduced myself. We started talking. And within 5 minutes, I was already scanning for damage, for problems, for things that needed fixing. But I couldn't find any. He had a stable job as a high school teacher. A good relationship with his family. Solid friend group. No recent traumatic breakup or family crisis or financial disaster. He was just a normal, healthy person at a party. I waited for the lack of interest to hit. For the boredom that always came when I talked to people who didn't need saving. But it didn't come. Marcus was funny. Smart. Easy to talk to. He asked me questions about my life and actually listened to the answers. He told me about his work teaching history and made it sound genuinely interesting. We talked for 2 hours. He asked for my number. I gave it to him. He texted the next day asking if I wanted to get coffee. I said yes. On our first date, I kept waiting for the reveal. For him to mention some deep trauma or ongoing crisis. But it never came. He talked about his life in a normal, healthy way. His job had challenges but he liked it. His family was close but not overbearing. He'd had relationships that hadn't worked out but he'd processed them and moved on. He was just a functional adult. It was the most foreign thing I'd ever encountered in a romantic prospect. I went home after that first date and felt nothing. No excitement, no spark, no pull to see him again. I told Dr. Chen about it in our next session. "Why do you think you didn't feel anything?" she asked. "Because he doesn't need me. He's perfectly fine on his own." "And that makes him unappealing?" "Apparently." She nodded slowly. "This is the moment where you have to choose. You can keep following your instincts and seeking out broken people. Or you can push through the discomfort and give this healthy man a chance. See what happens when you build a relationship based on genuine connection instead of codependency." I didn't want to. Everything in me was screaming to run back to what was familiar, even if what was familiar was painful. But I was tired. So tired of the pattern. So tired of giving everything and ending up alone. So I texted Marcus and agreed to a second date. The second date was a hike. He picked a trail with a great view and packed sandwiches for lunch. We walked and talked about books, about travel, about our families. It felt easy. Natural. But also terrifying because I had no idea what my role was supposed to be. I wasn't fixing anything. I wasn't managing his emotions or solving his problems. I was just existing next to him and that felt strange. At one point during the hike, I twisted my ankle on a loose rock. It wasn't serious but it hurt. Marcus immediately stopped and asked if I was okay. I said yes, I was fine, we could keep going. He didn't argue. Didn't insist on taking care of me or carrying me back to the car. He just asked if I was sure, accepted my answer, and we took a break to rest. It was such a small interaction. But it struck me how different it was from my previous relationships. Marcus respected my boundaries. He offered help but didn't force it. He treated me like an equal capable of making my own decisions. It felt foreign. But also good. We kept seeing each other. I kept pushing through the discomfort of being with someone who didn't need me. And slowly, something shifted. I started to see that Marcus did want me, even though he didn't need me. He wanted to spend time with me because he enjoyed my company, not because I was useful. It was a completely different experience of being valued. 3 months in, I had a panic attack. We were at his apartment watching a movie when it hit me. This feeling of wrongness, of waiting for the other shoe to drop, of not understanding what I was supposed to be doing in this relationship. I excused myself to the bathroom and sat on the floor hyperventilating. Marcus knocked softly on the door. "Becca? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I managed to say. "You don't sound fine. Can I come in?" I unlocked the door. He came in and sat on the floor next to me without saying anything, just being present while I struggled to breathe. When I finally calmed down enough to talk, I told him the truth. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be in a relationship with someone who doesn't need me. I keep waiting for you to fall apart or reveal some massive problem I need to fix, and you never do, and I don't know what my purpose is supposed to be." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your purpose is to be my partner. Not my mother or my therapist or my savior. Just my partner. Someone I choose to share my life with because I like who you are, not because you're useful. I don't know if I know how to do that. We can figure it out together." That word. Together. Not I'll teach you or let me show you. Just together, like we were equals embarking on something neither of us had all the answers for. I started crying. Marcus held me and didn't try to fix it, just let me feel what I was feeling. That was the moment something clicked. This was what healthy looked like. Two people supporting each other without one person doing all the emotional labor. The next few months were still uncomfortable, but I started to adjust. Started to see that Marcus wanting me without needing me was actually more meaningful than all the times broken men had needed me but never truly wanted me. We had our first real disagreement about 6 months in. It was over something small, where to go for dinner. But I immediately went into panic mode. Started apologizing profusely, saying we could go wherever he wanted, it didn't matter to me. He stopped me. "Rebecca, we're allowed to disagree. This doesn't mean the relationship is over. It just means we want different things for dinner. We're both adults. We can figure this out. But I don't want to fight." "We're not fighting. We're having a discussion. Healthy couples do this all the time." It sounds ridiculous now, but that was revolutionary for me. The idea that conflict didn't equal catastrophe. That two people could want different things and work it out without someone sacrificing everything. We ended up ordering from 2 different restaurants and sharing both meals. It was such a simple solution, but it represented something bigger. A relationship where both people's preferences mattered equally. I kept seeing Dr. Chen throughout all of this. She was proud of my progress but kept pushing me to go deeper. "You're doing well with Marcus," she said. "But have you told him about your pattern? About Tyler and Daniel and all the others?" I hadn't. I was terrified that if Marcus knew the full extent of my issues, he'd run. "You can't build real intimacy while hiding parts of yourself," Dr. Chen said. "At some point, you have to risk being fully seen." A year into dating Marcus, I finally told him everything. About Tyler and Daniel and Chris, about my addiction to fixing broken men, about how being with him was the first time I'd ever been in a healthy relationship and I was still learning how to navigate it. I was terrified he'd be horrified, that he'd see me as damaged and leave. But he didn't. He listened to the whole story. Then he said, "Thank you for trusting me with that. I'm glad you're here now. And I'm glad you're choosing yourself." That was it. No judgment, no horror, no running away. Just acceptance. We've been together for 3 years now. He proposed 6 months ago. When he asked me to marry him, he didn't say I was the love of his life or that he couldn't live without me. He said something better. "You're my favorite person. I love who you are, and I love who I am when I'm with you." I want to build a life together where we're both whole people choosing to be together, not two broken people trying to complete each other. It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me. Because it was real. It was sustainable. It was based on genuine partnership instead of codependency. I said yes. My mom cried when I told her. Happy tears this time, not the worried tears she'd cried over my previous relationships. I'm so glad you found someone who deserves you, she said. I'm glad I finally believed I deserved someone like him, I replied. Because that was the real shift. Not finding the right person, but believing I was worth being treated well. Believing my value existed outside of what I could do for others. The wedding is next spring. I'm actually excited instead of anxious. Because I'm not marrying Marcus to prove anything or fix anything. I'm marrying him because we genuinely enjoy building a life together. But the journey to get here wasn't easy. And the pattern didn't disappear overnight. Even now, 3 years into a healthy relationship, I still sometimes feel that pull toward broken people. I'll meet someone who's struggling and feel that familiar urge to step in and fix everything. The difference is now I recognize it. I see it for what it is, an old pattern trying to reassert itself, and I consciously choose differently. I can care about people without carrying them. I can offer support without sacrificing myself. I can have boundaries while still being compassionate. It's taken years of therapy and conscious effort to get here. And I'm still learning. Last month, I ran into Tyler at a coffee shop. The first broken man. The one who'd lived on my couch and told me we were just friends. He looked the same. Maybe a little older, a little more worn down. He saw me and his face lit up. Rebecca. Oh my God, I can't believe I ran into you. We small talked for a minute. Then he said, hey, I'm actually going through some stuff right now. My girlfriend just left me and I'm trying to find a new place to live. You wouldn't happen to know of any cheap apartments, would you? I could see where this was going. Could see him working up to asking for help, for money, for a place to stay. The old me would have offered immediately. Would have felt guilty for even hesitating. But I'm not that person anymore. I don't, sorry, I said. But I hope you find something. Good luck with everything. I walked away without giving him my number or offering to help or falling back into that pattern. It felt good. Empowering, even. I told Marcus about the encounter later that night. How did it feel? He asked. Good. Really good. Like closing a door that should have been closed years ago. He smiled. I'm proud of you. Me too. 2 weeks after running into Tyler, I got a message from Chris. The artist I'd supported financially and emotionally until he left for California. The message said, Hey Rebecca. Long time no talk. I'm actually back in town and I'm putting together an art show. I remembered how amazing you were at organizing that kind of stuff. Would you be interested in helping? I can't pay much, but I'd really appreciate your expertise. I stared at that message for a long time. The old me would have said yes immediately. Would have been flattered that he remembered me, that he valued my skills, that he was reaching out. But I could see it clearly now. He didn't value me. He valued what I could do for him. And the moment I stopped being useful, he'd leave again. I deleted the message without responding. Dr. Chen says these moments are tests. Opportunities to prove to myself that I've really changed, that the pattern really is broken. Each time I choose myself over someone else's needs, the pattern weakens a little more. It's not about being selfish or cold. It's about recognizing the difference between helping and enabling, between compassion and codependency. I can be a kind, caring person without sacrificing myself on the altar of other people's problems. That's the lesson I wish I'd learned at 22. But I'm grateful I learned it at all, even if it took me until my late 20s. I think about the younger version of myself sometimes. The one who thought love meant doing everything for someone and asking nothing in return. The one who thought being needed was the same as being valued. I wish I could go back and tell her that she's enough just as she is. That she doesn't need to earn love through service. That the right person will see her value without her having to prove it constantly. But I can't go back. All I can do is move forward with the knowledge I have now. And share my story with anyone else who might be stuck in the same pattern. If you're reading this and you recognize yourself in my story, please hear me. You are not responsible for fixing other people. You are not a bad person for having boundaries. You are not selfish for choosing yourself. The right person won't need you to prove your worth by sacrificing everything. They'll see your value just by being around you. And you deserve that. You deserve a relationship where you're valued, not just needed. Where you're chosen, not just useful. It took me years to learn that. Years of broken relationships and broken pieces of myself scattered across other people's lives. But I learned it. And I rebuilt myself into someone stronger. Not because I found someone to fix me. But because I finally learned to stop fixing everyone else and started taking care of myself. Marcus didn't save me. I saved myself. He just happened to be there when I was finally healthy enough to accept real love. That's how it's supposed to work. Not two broken people trying to complete each other. But two whole people choosing to share their lives. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for listening. Please subscribe to Peace Stories for more real-life narratives about growth and healing. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and if this story resonated with you. Share this with anyone who might need to hear it. Because the pattern of fixing broken men at the cost of breaking yourself is more common than anyone wants to admit. You're not alone in this struggle. And you can break free from it. I'm Rebecca. And I finally learned that I don't need to keep fixing broken men. I just needed to stop breaking myself in the process.